A lot of you catch anger, you catch depression, you catch anxiety from each other. With good boundaries, you can stay calm, you can stay centered, and you actually have the ability, when you're not engaging in that emotion, to speak into their life.
And it's you and me, babe, whatever comes. Knowing bigger hands are holding ours, and the greatest days are ahead of us. Growing in love, learning to be a better us.
Hi there, welcome to A Better Us.
And welcome to our home.
Wait a second, isn't today's show all about boundaries? Maybe you should scoot over a little bit.
Hey, hold on a second. No, I don't think that is what our experts are talking about today.
Okay.
Well, Dr. Mike is going to be back on the beach to say that there are healthy boundaries that we need to have that actually make our marriage better.
And I'm thinking they have more to do with our words and feelings than anything. And speaking of healthy boundaries, in the second half of the show, we're going to talk about an issue in marriage that can be a hot button topic for a lot of couples. Boundaries with our in-laws.
Marriage authors and speakers Dave and Ashley Willis are here to tackle that one. And it is a tricky one. Now, it's been said that Adam and Eve were in paradise because neither of them had in-laws to deal with. Well, we'll get some tips to help us out.
And as usual, chomping at the bit to talk about these topics are our kitchen couples. CFL football legend Mike Pinball Clemens and his wife Diane.
And recording artist Dan McCauley and his wife Danielle.
Everybody's ready? So let's get started.
So I'm sitting in my clinical office conducting a marital session, and I typically hear things that sound like this. You ready? The wife will start with something like, "He's just always so critical of me." And before she can get that out of her mouth, her husband will respond with, "Well, I'm critical of her because she never does anything I ask." And before he can finish his sentence, she interrupts him. "Well, I never do anything he asks because he's just so controlling." Before she actually finishes the word controlling, he says, "Well, I'm controlling because you never do anything I ask you to do and you're constantly mad. I'm constantly mad because you're so condescending." And they go back and then forth and back and forth over and over and over again. And guys, this is a classic example of a codependent couple that struggles to take responsibility for their own attitudes, their own actions, their own thoughts, and their own feelings. And instead of allowing the other person to have their emotion, to just have it, the codependent couple feels threatened by their spouse's emotion, and they feel the need to respond with the emotional response of their spouse with their own emotional response. When you have clear boundaries, things go in a very different way. You know where you end and where your partner begins. You know that there's some separation there. You also know that you're not at the mercy of your spouse's behavior or their problems or their hurt or their pain. Boundaries, see, they're really all about you. Let me explain. The authors of, really, it's one of the best-selling Christian books of all time. It's called Boundaries, appropriately enough. It's written by John Townsend and Henry Cloud. They describe boundaries like this. They say, when you build a fence around your yard, you don't build it to figure out the boundaries of your neighbor's yard so you can figure out where his property line is so that you can dictate what he does in his yard. You build it around your own yard so that you can maintain control of what happens to your own property. And that's how personal boundaries work. Exactly the same way. You can't control what happens in your spouse's emotional yard. You can't control how your spouse speaks to you. You just can't. But you can control how you behave when they speak to you in what you perceive as an inappropriate way. For instance, your spouse comes at you, man, they start hammering you, they're calling you names, they're at it again. You have options. Your first option is to have zero boundaries and get right into the mix. Go aggressive on them, win the argument. That's really poor boundaries. That's codependent. The well-boundaried response is you draw a boundary. You can hang up the phone. You can say, hey, look, I'm more than happy to have this conversation with you, but in order to do that, we're going to have to take a break for 15 minutes and come back later when we're calmer. That is a good boundary. See, boundaries let you determine what you will and won't tolerate and what you will and won't be exposed to. And you set the consequences. That's the beautiful part about boundaries. You set your limits. I had a couple in counseling. This was awesome. They had knockdown, drag-out fights all the time. You ready? Here's what it was about. Going to church. Can you believe this? The wife was always late for church, and the husband would get so mad. He would yell, he would scream, he would explode. And finally, after many sessions on boundaries, the husband finally decided to stop exploding and to start drawing a healthy boundary with his wife. And here's the boundary that he set. He said, look, I'm no longer gonna let your tardiness have the power to make me angry ever again. I'm not doing it. You don't have that power. I have a boundary. We're separate. Instead, I'm gonna wait patiently for you when you're late. I'm gonna be kind and loving. And if I can't, or I feel like I need to go, I'm gonna get in my car and I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go to church, and you can follow me there, and when I see you, I'll hug you and kiss you and give you a big hug and tell you that you're great. Now that is a good boundary. And honestly, it was the end of their ongoing battle over her tardiness. So one of the key parts of boundaries is the idea that you are not me. Your spouse is not an extension of you. They are not here exclusively to meet your needs and to do what you think they need to do. That belief system will break down a marriage in a quick minute, because love breaks down when we don't see our spouse as people, but as objects of our own needs. Does that make sense? So when your spouse comes to you and says, I'm struggling because I feel distant from you, and I feel like there's a disconnect between us, if you have good, healthy boundaries, you don't interpret that as an accusation or get defensive. Instead, you're able to kind of listen. You're able to kind of take it in and say, okay, I can hear you and understand you, and I'm not threatened by that. I'm not feeling like you're beating me up or like I have to prove myself. I can just value you for who you are because you have your own emotion and it's not mine. Now, look, I know this is counterintuitive, but understanding boundaries allows you to actually see the other person as separate. And instantly, the minute you do that, you're able to let them have their own issues, and their emotion doesn't become contagious. You don't catch it from them. A lot of you catch anger, you catch depression, you catch anxiety from each other. With good boundaries, you can stay calm, you can stay centered, and you actually have the ability, when you're not engaging in that emotion, to speak into their life, to be empathic, to love them through whatever's going on in their life. So demonstrating good boundaries, it is mission critical to a healthy marriage, and it actually allows you to love your spouse more fully and to be the wife or the husband that God has truly called you to be.
Well, we are in the kitchen with our kitchen couples. We have Mike and Diane and Dan and Danielle. And guys, it's all about boundaries in marriage. Boundaries.
Yeah, Dr. Mike, he had some good points there. And it's, it's something that we need in all our relationships,
to be healthy.
But in marriage, the most important relationship, we need to have those clear boundaries as well, and not allow the other person to just dictate your feelings and catch things from them.
But in marriage, your lives overlap so much. Yeah. It's almost like Mike said, counterintuitive to think of like drawing lines around where your spouse doesn't affect you. But you have to do that in a healthy way. So that, like, I love when he said that it can be anger can be contagious, or depression, like really volatile emotions can be contagious. And so we have to just make sure that we've got those lines drawn and say, okay, he's having a bad day, he's taking it out on me, he's human, it can happen. I'm not going to retaliate and push back. I'm just going to step back and say, hun, I see you're having a really bad day today, and I feel like your target right now, so I think we just need to stop and let's take a break, and we'll come back. That's kind of what I get Mike saying, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, we're trained to think we here as marriage, we're joined as one. We are one, but ultimately I'm responsible for myself. I'm not responsible for you.
True.
Okay. Yeah.
When you think about it, and I'm going to throw this one to Mike, because How would a football game be without the boundaries? You know, it would be kind of chaotic.
You know, I would like it because
Yeah.
I can run everywhere.
Yeah,
Yes,
right.
yes.
Can't catch me.
Yes. In the essence of it though, when we think of boundaries, it kind of has a negative connotation in some respects, right? Because we're in this relationship and we have to mark these grounds, right? And so we are not being bound with boundaries, but boundaries actually give us freedom, right? They give us freedom to love even when we feel threatened, right? Or even when we feel uncomfortable. It's saying that I've got boundaries on how I am going to behave, regardless of what my bride does, right? I'm going to have boundaries on how I react to that. And that reaction is actually going to give freedom. It's a weird thing though, because you know, when we think about how a relationship works and the different things that counteract there, I get the more control I exercise, right? The more freedom I give. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yes.
no, it's
Yeah.
the same in parenting
Right,
too. I
that's a
think,
good
you know, we experts say we thrive, or our kids thrive with bedtime routine, with curfew, with all of those things. They actually, even though they think they don't want it, they really do, and they need it. Yeah.
Same with discipline with your kids. When you discipline your kid, people say, "Oh no, why do you do that?" But they want to be disciplined, right?
And I love what you were saying, Mike, about the boundaries giving you freedom. And along the lines with kids, I heard a report done once where a schoolyard, they hadn't put up fencing yet around the schoolyard. It was a new school. And so at recess, all the kids kind of grouped close to the building. And they would play, but they played really close. They had this huge yard to play in, but nobody would go in it because they didn't really know how far, and it wasn't safe. So when they finally put the fences up, the kids were everywhere. They were playing everywhere in the playground because they felt safe. They knew there was. So when we have boundaries in our marriage, we're actually creating safe places where we can thrive as a couple because I'm not giving you permission to tear me apart because you're having a bad day. It's like, okay, I'm going to protect what we've got here. I'm not going to lash back, or you can say that to me too. You know, not that you're always the bad guy. I'm just picking on you like crazy here. But you know what I'm saying, you know, and so because then it creates this safe place where you can grow and you can be free and you're not controlled by the bad stuff.
And those kind of boundaries or kind of the rules of your relationship, you set either, you know, ahead of time, either, you know, before marriage or you're into marriage, but at a time where you're both calm and you're saying, you know, let's just talk things through. If you do this, I think it's important that I not give into that. Maybe that we just take 15 minutes or we, and so you kind of know the rules ahead of time instead of making them up on the heat of the moment. Yeah.
Oh, baby, in the heat of the moment, it's hard, isn't it? Yeah, because you're right there.
And sometimes you don't have them in place though. So there are some things that you can't predict, right? And at that time, exactly, walk away a little bit and then come back. So don't try to create the boundaries in the middle of it all, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
And then it might be a matter of kind of debriefing after the blow up and after thing and just say, you know, remember the other day when we had that issue and I walked away. It's because I feel when you are at this point that it's important, you know, for our relationship that we just take that time. And so maybe it could be a post, you know, fight, you know, analysis and then setting some boundaries there.
And it could be that if, say, you say something inappropriate to your spouse, say I say something to you that's condescending, and you just kind of, it offends you and you really don't know what to say and you just kind of walk away and you think, it's good to come back and say, honey, you know, 2 days ago when you said that to me, you really, like, it felt like you were talking down to me and I didn't appreciate that. And so, because I've heard it said that you teach people how to treat you. And you're tutoring people. This is how I expect to be treated, so this is what you can do to me.
You get what you allow.
Exactly. So even if you're beyond the point that it's already happened, you can look back and say, you know what, that wasn't really good, and so let's not move forward in our marriage that way. I really don't want to have that kind of
For
thing.
educational purposes, not for it to beat them back
Right,
up with it, but just to
exactly.
clarify and say, I'm kind of drawing a line here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we all want to be a better us, right? The name of the show. We want to be a better us. And so if you're joined as partners in making the us that you share the best it can be, then you're both on board with whatever it takes, and sometimes, a lot of times, it's swallowing your pride and saying, okay, yeah, I kind of blew it there. I shouldn't have done that. I'm really sorry. I'll do better. I see that now.
And we're going to draw a boundary there.
Yeah, boundaries. It's good. Yeah.
So, yeah,
right.
good stuff.
Good
so,
stuff,
lots more you could say about it. That the book he recommended, you should get too. In fact, we'll have that on our website.
Yeah, abetterus.tv website.
Now, we're going to be back in the kitchen in a little bit, so stay with us.
Yeah, more to come.
Okay, this is kind of dangerous territory, talking about in-laws. We probably don't want to give too many personal examples that who might be watching. I don't know.
In-laws watching here.
Hi, we hope you're enjoying the show.
Our vision at A Better Us is to see every marriage become a loving union that creates a safe family haven, building a legacy of hope for future generations.
Yeah. That's why we feel it's so important to invest in marriage relationships through producing a new episode of A Better Us every week.
Absolutely. If you feel as we do that marriages are worth investing in, then please consider joining us as a member of A Better Us with a monthly donation of $25.
You'll be making a big difference in lives and families, and we'll send you 2 of our special mugs, the mugs that you see our kitchen couples using each program.
Absolutely. And be sure to send us your mugshot selfie, and we'll post it on our Facebook page and on our website.
Simply visit abetterus.tv and click donate to set up your automatic monthly giving. God bless you, and thank you so much for making this program possible and helping us strengthen marriages.
So we can all become a better us.
Hey, Dave and Ashley here with Marriage Today, and we're going to talk about a really big topic for a lot of couples, and that is disgruntled relationships or a lack of unity that we can have with our in-laws.
Yeah, and this is a huge topic. I mean, huge topic. I think that most couples at some point in their marriage, even if they have great relationships with their parents, will come to a place where just some boundaries are crossed or where there's just some unhealthy dynamics that are happening. Yeah. And when that happens, what do you do? And then what do you do when it's severe? It's one set of parents is just being hostile towards your spouse or trying to control in a manipulative way, or if one spouse has a primary loyalty to parents instead of to the marriage, what do you do with that?
It's hard because we love our parents and we love our spouse and we want to be respectful to both. And sometimes, you can find yourself in between there and you feel like you're in between a rock and a hard place. But I want to tell you that God calls us to, when we're married, He calls us to having our first loyalty be with our spouse instead of our parents. When we're young, we're supposed to honor our parents by listening to them and following directions, but it looks different when we're adults and especially when we're married. Even if our parents have, certain opinions about things, just because they tell us what to do or tell us how to treat our spouse or say something negative about our spouse, that doesn't mean that we have to treat our spouse in that way or follow their directions, because our first loyalty has to be with our spouse. And so if your parents are treating your husband or your wife in a negative manner and they're being hateful and they're saying mean things all the time, you have to be able to put your foot down. You have to go to them in a respectful manner and say, Mom and Dad, you cannot talk about my spouse this way. I love my spouse. I'm married to him. I'm married to her. And I just need you to treat him with respect. And until you can treat my spouse with respect, then we really can't spend a lot of time around you, because it's really having a negative impact on my spouse and on my marriage. And a lot of times your parents may not even realize that this is as serious as it is.
Right.
And so, as long as we calmly approach them, I feel like that there can be a lot of progress in this area.
Yeah, where all relationships are preserved and even strengthened.
We are back in the kitchen with Mike and Diane, Dan and Danielle. And okay, this is kind of dangerous territory, talking about in-laws. We probably don't want to give too many personal examples that who might be watching. I don't know.
Some in-laws watching here. I don't. But you know what? It really is a very hot button topic because of the close relationship you have with your parents, and then the close relationship you establish with your your spouse. So the parent-child relationship, the husband-wife relationship, quite often they intersect, but we got to keep those boundaries there,
And
right?
It can be pretty hard to navigate because growing up, that's just ingrained in you. Okay, mom and dad, they're the boss. You know, you listen to what they say, and they're the authority figure in your life. But then all of a sudden, it shifts. You're an adult. You get married, but there's still that, you know, that childhood thing that's inside of you that you gotta, you know, if they say something, I gotta respond to them. What they say is more important. Shouldn't be than my spouse.
It's funny, in college and university, one of my roommates was dating this guy, and she was constantly on the phone. Her mom lived a long ways away. Constantly on the phone with her mom, talking about him and complaining about him and asking advice about him. Constantly on the phone with her mom. Well, she ended up marrying this guy. And even after they got married, she was constantly on the phone about her husband because it was a pattern she had already started before they got married. And it caused some issues for them. Yes,
Kind of pitted
exactly.
them. Pitted,
It pitted her and her mom against her husband. And so that's really dangerous. And so we have to
You
be
get
careful.
third-party offense. You tell somebody something else, you move on, you have the healing conversation, and then your parent is still holding on to it because
Exactly. They're offended for their child. That how could you do that to my Yeah, those boundaries are so important. They really are.
Well, I've had that lived experience. My mother-in-law was just sweet as pie, and she really did a lot of things in terms of preparing Diane for marriage, and really gave her some really good coaching. And I would even say great coaching on marriage and what we're to do. We're to, you know, we're to leave our mother and father and cling to our brides, right? So that relationship for me and my mom, being a single parent and being so instrumental in my success in life, was a little bit more difficult for the transition. And, you know, one day, you know, I had to say, Mom, listen, if you know, you can't respect my wife, right? You're not welcome in my home. And my mom, you know, she's been my all in all, and you know, most difficult conversation, easily the most difficult conversation I've ever had in my life. And they were going through some things, and they worked them out, and today it's wonderful. But there was a moment there where I actually had to have a conversation with my mom. You know, she visiting from Florida. It was a tough conversation.
So you set up a healthy boundary there. You know, the first segment we talked about boundaries, and sometimes you got to, you know, say here are some boundaries that we shouldn't cross when it comes to, you know, interfering or whatever you might call it in our marriage. You know, now that we're in that stage, we're in-laws.
We are in-laws
and
now.
so, but you know, you watch your kids, you watch them in marriage, and you just want to jump in and you want to say something, and you want to, or bite your tongue, or because you
it's hard.
It's
really
comes
hard.
naturally because we think, oh, we can help them with this, we can fix this, we can, and so because we did that with her growing up, and so you want to keep doing that, but no, you do have to have that boundary, and so from our perspective, we're trying to be sensitive to it, you know, going that way as they're learning, coming back toward us. So it's a bit of a challenge.
It's a tricky dance,
Yeah.
is what it is, because you want to show your love, you want to take care of your kids, but when your kids become adults, as you guys know, and as you will eventually, that you have to take several steps back and just let them figure it out on their own. If they come to us for advice, we're all ears, but we can't give the advice unless it's asked for, and so that's the hard part for us, is we want to give it, but we can't, so we just bite our tongues.
And Mike, you referred to the scripture about, you know, it's from Genesis 2, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave or be joined to his wife. But that leaving, it's not forsaking, it's not disrespecting them, but it's just saying there's a new priority here. You know, she's number one now.
Yes.
But,
And that's what should be. That's the priorities that God established. God, marriage, children.
I thank
And
my
that
mom
always-
for teaching me that, and Ben for adjusting.
Yeah. Well, it's been a good show.
Yeah, thanks for being with us. We'll be back to wrap things up in a moment.
Hey friends, Ron and Ann here. We're so glad you're with us at A Better Us, and we pray your marriage is blessed as you take this in.
Be sure and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and enjoy this video.
You know, there's those moments when things happen in a relationship where it calls upon you to give extraordinary grace and forgiveness. And how do you do that? How do you really forgive?
And I think sometimes we think, okay, forgiveness is a deep feeling. Forgiveness looks like it has certain steps to it. Honestly, forgiveness just requires two things: an awareness that you have deeply been hurt. We often think I should deny that I've been hurt, right, but you really need to be aware of and own how this moment
and
affected
acknowledge
me.
That,
yes,
right? That it really is hurtful.
Right,
okay?
and once you're aware of that fully, then you need to set it aside and in humility offer that. And to me, I don't think it's possible without the work of the Holy Spirit in your life to really give you the capacity to now take that hurt and give it away. Set it aside, not hold your spouse accountable for that hurt for the rest of their life in a way they can't fix. Right. That doesn't mean you're not honest that it's still a real hurt, but it means you're not asking them to repay the debt. You're giving them grace.
I can't remember who said this, but it's something to the effect of, if you want a good relationship, make sure you marry a good forgiver. And it goes both ways.
So true.
Right? Because it's inevitable. We're both going to need to do that. A good marriage is built on plenty of forgiveness.
Absolutely.
Well, today's show has had one common theme: boundaries.
From keeping healthy boundaries and how we respond to each other in marriage, to respecting the sacredness of our marriage and creating healthy boundaries with our parents.
There's no shame in protecting the us you've created by identifying ways to best care for this most important human relationship.
As you both review your priorities, God first, and then your marriage, and then your children, and so on, it becomes clear where those lines should be drawn.
And to make any of this work, our first priority does have to be God. And not just up here, but in here as well. When that relationship is strong, it has a positive and powerful impact on our second priority, our marriage. Closer to God truly means closer to each other.
When you've both done heart business with God, it completely changes the dynamics of your home, and especially how you relate to each other.
If we can help you refresh that connection with God, or even get you started for the first time, our team would love to pray with you. Our prayer line is on the screen. It's available 24/7. It's there for you.
Thanks again for stopping by. Remember, with God's help, there is always hope to become a better us.
Hey friends, we really hope you're enjoying the marriage conversations here with A Better Us on our YouTube channel.
We have hundreds of more helpful marriage videos designed to give you hope and tools to make your marriage better.
You can see just a few options we think you might like here and here.
Enjoy! Oh, and make sure you subscribe by clicking here so you don't miss out on all the great marriage help we have coming your way soon.